All right, we're live on Facebook. I'm going to give people a couple of minutes to come in. I'm going to share out through the network. We got a new friend that's on with us this morning from India. So this is cool. Let me just get set up here. Let's see, 1 second. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for continued love and support and contributions. And if these shows resonate, please share because we're getting pounded and suppressed by Facebook, and we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that. Okay, so we got a few people in the house: Jania, Kelly, Meredith, Patricia. 12 people in the house. Need to beat the bushes a little bit. Let me get it out through the network real quick. Sorry about the delay. Let's see. Just get it out to a few of our associated groups so they can have the privilege of being able to meet our new sister, our new friend. All right. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the support. All right. Let's bring up our new friend. Hope I'm saying her name right. Ayesha Sheeba. How's that for a Texan accent? Let's see. All right. Let's give her a second for a video to come in. I don't see a video. Ayesha, can you hear me? I can't see you or hear you. I'm not sure if your camera and mic are activated or engaged with Zoom. You might you might try going out and coming back in if you can hear me. Okay, I think she heard me. So what's going on, everybody? On Boldy, good to see you. Thank you for your incredible contributions in Soulogy over the last year. Here we go. She's come back now. Yeah, there's no audio and there's no video, Ayesha. So, I would suggest, let me see. I would suggest that you actually get out of Zoom altogether, get out of Google and everything, and go back to Facebook, back to Messenger, and click on the link again. And if there's anything that can be done, that would take care of it. That would send you back to the default settings. Hello, Julie Devereaux. Marita, how you doing, Marita? I saw that you're meeting with a group of women. 4 of them, I think, you met through Soulogy, which I think is really cool. These are the stories that make me, get up and say, it's worth it. What you're doing is making a difference. What you and Morgan are doing making a difference, because a lot of times it feels like we're not making a difference. At least for me, anyway. I know. No, it's still not. Ayesha, I don't know if you're on a computer or on a phone, but if you're on a computer, you might try the phone. If you're on the phone, you might try the computer, because the device that you're using, she's gone again. Anyway, so seeing things like Marita meeting with friends met through Soulogy, I mean, that means a lot. I think, and I'm just, as usual, just being honest with everybody. War, shadows and all. But, here we go. Let's see who we got here. Carrie. Hey, Carrie. Um, yeah, we think that we get this stuff come in. We're all connected. We all have a purpose. We all have a role, multiple roles. And we think that the evidence of our success is based on the old school bullshit, the old 3D, you know, how much money you got in the bank, how many clothes you got, you know what I mean? All that stuff, where you live. Yeah, that isn't working, Ayesha. I don't know. There's something on your end that's blocking it. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. Yeah. What? Yeah, there's a problem with India. We'll just have to come back to it. Can't do it. Can't do it. There's some kind of block over there. Some kind of no. There's some kind of restriction. I'm not. Yeah, she's saying, hang on. She's just saying, hang on. She's going to try something. Yeah. This mic is hot. We're going to try something else. No, I'm not going to be live. We'll do it later. I'll set it up for both of them. I'll set it up for the other lady too. I don't think there's anything she can do on Zoom. There's some kind of restriction. She can't hear you. She can see you, but she can't hear you. Well, she's got some kind of restriction. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to keep going with it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and change.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to fix this. Just give me a moment. I don't know what I did.
Cool.
Okay, just let me.
Well, we have your voice. Okay, so that's all that matters. I mean, I can pull up a picture to show everybody what you look like, so they don't have to look at me. How's that? You sound. Well, I have a lot of friends. Let me pull up your picture. I'm serious. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends, and I have for quite some time. I don't speak to them as much as I used to, but I don't speak to anybody anymore. But I have a lot of friends in India, and that were a big part of my journey when I first woke up a few years ago. And your accent sounds very, very English, very Western. I mean,
well, I spent a lot of my lifetime overseas. So yeah, I don't have an Indian accent, I guess. I'm trying to still make this video work. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just clicking on the video icon.
Don't worry about the video. Hang on. I'm trying to get back into Zoom. I'm all messed up over here. Okay, we're gonna work this out. Hang on a second. Oh, there she is. Okay, I see her now. Okay, I'm gonna pull up a picture of you. You don't have to worry about it, anything. Okay. So here we go. You see that picture of you? Do you approve of that one?
Yeah.
Is that one okay? So, yeah. So I have a lot of friends in India. A lot of friendships I made back in 2013, 14. I joined a lot of poetry groups over there, and I still have some very close friends over there. But like I said, you sound westernized.
So, well, even I have a hard time speaking to Indians, so
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They always ask me to slow down.
See, it's the other way around for me. I grew up in South Texas, where Spanish, well, I guess a regional version of Spanish is spoken. It's called Tex-Mex, so it's half Texan and half Mexican and half Spanish, and so anyway, it's the same thing. Most of the kids of my generation have no accent at all, and most of them don't even speak Spanish. So then I go back and try to talk to these people, and I can't understand a damn thing they're saying. They're talking way too fast. It's probably the same thing. So this is a very unconventional show. I want to thank you for sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence today. I'm very excited to broadcast with somebody from India, because India has always been a big part of Soulogy when it was started 8 years ago. If I look at the demographics on any of the any of the places I can look, India is, I think, I think it's the second most represented country, and I believe, I'm not sure what, I guess Delhi is, or New Delhi is, like the fourth biggest city in terms of people that are in the community at Soulogy. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and thank you for coming on.
Well, it's an honor, and thank you for inviting me.
And like I was saying, it's a very unconventional show. It's a conversation, so we're just getting to know each
I
other.
wish the video worked, but I guess anything works at this point.
You know what? It's fine. It's fine. We get to look at your face anyway. You look like a what do they call it? A film noir movie actress from the 40s or 50s. You know, where they only use the black and white. But yeah, we just have a conversation, get to know each other. It's interesting when we can compare cultures and what's happening in what people call the awakening or the ascension or the apocalypse or the unveiling. And it's interesting to get different perspectives from around the world. And I think that carries needed information for people that are listening. So can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I know India is a much different consciousness than the West. I'm not saying any place in the world's perfect, but there is a higher level. There's a whole different type of consciousness over there, and you've had some exposure outside of India as well. Do people talk about being awake? Do they talk about ascension? Do you hear the term light workers in your circles that you run in India?
Well, to be honest, since this is a very ancient culture, the traditions, everything dating back to, if you look at it from the mythology of India, all of these, the Hinduism and all of that is basic. The foundation consists of things like meditation and yoga and everything that we today have sort of resurrected back into this world through. It's become a trend, that yoga and meditation is no longer something that belongs to certain countries or cultures, but everybody's pretty much aware of these things. But the thing is, people are still, there are a lot of gifted people, and India is yet to accept a non-religious, like there is a community. I'm not saying there isn't. There's definitely a community of spiritualists in India, but they are always still, somehow or the other connected to some religion or the other, some faith or the other, because people are still not at that point where they're comfortable standing out. There's a very small percentage of people who actually even do that. Whereas I know personally there are people who are gifted, but they would rather be attached to some kind of faith because makes them feel safe. It makes them feel accepted. So that's how it is right now in India.
Yeah, I mean that sounds similar to here, and I think you can have a faith and still, and not be like a fish out of water in these types of communities, which I hate to even define anything like that. But it's really interesting, the history of Hinduism. I spent a lot of time in my old life for about 20 years, 25 years, going into people's homes. And in America, when you do that, and especially if you're in some of the bigger cities, you're going to see all types of different cultures. And one of the things that really struck me was when I would go into the home of a Hindu family and the altar and their customs. I would eat with them sometimes, and I always really had a lot of resonance with it. And then later on, I got into studying it like I did with the other religions. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. Some of the I guess the old stories from the old sacred text, where they talk about these what seem to be galactic wars in the sky, UFOs, human. Well, I don't know how you would put it, but humans that were godlike. That all this stuff that comes down that's really, really interesting. Do people in India and I'm just going to try to use the best terms I can. Do they tend do they tend to think out of the box? Do they tend to go, hey, there are spaceships out there. Hey, things aren't always what they seem. What's being presented to us isn't exactly what's really happening. Do they talk about paranormal experiences? Do they talk about visitations from star family or ancestors or that type of thing?
Well, people they do believe in supernatural occurrences. They do, because we too have our ghost hunting programs on TV, and so like there is a certain awareness, but most of it, as I said, we do have different religions. Yeah, as you probably already know, India does have other religions of minorities, and which are the Christians and the Muslims and everyone else. So it's like it is a mixed culture. The entire thing is so mixed, and primarily being Hindus. Well, I would say that I was born, basically, I am a Hindu, and I was born into a Brahmin caste, and so we're known as the priesthoods, the caste of priesthood. And so we did have, we were taught right from childhood. You're taught a lot about the scriptures and chanting and all of these things right from childhood. And of course, I've heard my father tell me all these stories about, that dated back then according to their scriptures. And so, yes, there are a lot of questions that rose in my mind as a child. I used to question my father, like, why aren't these kind of occurrences happening now? Why has it got to only happen then? And what happened to all of that now? And so I had a lot of questions to ask, which nobody really had an answer to. And as I, right from childhood, I've had this ability to see past dimensions, that is, see past our 3D existence. And I don't remember as to being able to differentiate between someone who was even alive or not. So when you are at the age of 2 or 3, you basically believe everything you see. And so for me, it didn't look any different if somebody told me there is a ghost next to you or a spirit next to you, and I would look at that spirit and think that's just a normal thing that everybody saw. And so that is how I grew up. And so to believe in things which I couldn't see, like what my dad was telling me, of these stories that came from scriptures, I was like, where are all of these? Why don't these things happen nowadays? And so it's like, why do we have to read them in books? Why can't we see them anymore? And these are the things that still rise in a lot of people's minds. But again, of course, because it's all, the programming of our dimension, people tend to just go blindly into faith like every other religion, like every other faith. You just follow the system or you become a black sheep. So most people just follow the system, I guess,
Yeah, or you can be a troublemaker and a rebel like you. Why? These are the people that ask why, mom, why dad? Yeah. Now, and again, this isn't a conventional conversation, but okay, you woke up, and a lot of people talk about this. People that come on this show talk about, when I was a kid, I could, I had these certain abilities. And then over time, I went to sleep, or, I went into the matrix, or I got a job, got married, had kids, and all that stuff, right? And then they have like a reawakening. Did you have in your adulthood, did you have like a reawakening where you got re-energized with these higher sensitivities, or were you always connected to it, and did you maintain it?
I must admit that I'm very grateful to have parents who were very supportive of my abilities, because both of them were clairvoyant. But, of course, they had their own experience and their own journey, which meant that they denied that. But at the same time, they never denied me of what I knew, what I could see or experience. They simply said that you just need to tell us what happens. Don't go out there and tell your friends in school or other people, but you can always talk to us about it. So it was not something strange to have these experiences at home, which I think is a huge blessing. And so I grew up pretty much being aware of these things. And it's like, whenever I think of myself, I remember of that little boy in that movie Sixth Sense, where he was able to see dead people. And I guess I always got to see dead people. And
I see dead people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I love
But
that.
the point is, until I was about 4 or 5, I didn't even know they were dead. And
Mm.
so until they would look back at me, and I would figure that it's either that I was being rude and I was looking at them for too long, or they would look at me as if wondering, how can she see me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was always that kind of back and forth thing. But I wouldn't really say that there was a point where I went back to sleep. It was always a, I didn't really have a choice that way. I was always able to see it
Mm-hmm.
whether I wanted to see it or not. So I grew up pretty much accepting it. And it was more of, yes, I did have a normal childhood. I grew up, I was in the corporate for some time, but I was always drawn towards spirituality, and I was always drawn towards the supernatural. Everything about my culture, my upbringing, my experiences, it always pulled me back into this. So when my parents passed away 20 years ago, I think that was when you can say that I really came into, wanting to be myself. I was looking for
Yeah.
me. And when I started looking for me, and I was also looking for them, because I felt like this little bulb went up in my head, like, hey, like it doesn't have to be the end of the road, like maybe I can see them just like I could see all the other spirits. Why am I not seeing them? And I want to see them. So that that drove me right back to whatever I was denying at that point of time. So I don't think that I just
Wow.
went off to sleep or got up at any point. I guess it was just me going through the different phases, and I've loved every part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's really and I think it's interesting too that like your parents said it's okay, we can talk about it here, but don't talk about it out there. Which I'm not pointing to your family in regard to that. I'm pointing to that what is it? That cautionary type of approach that so many people have taken because of the energetic suppression that we've
Yes,
had to our true nature, particularly women.
yes.
Because I mean that's pretty much who's led the charge the whole time, and they were the ones quieted and quieted down. But now they're stepping up. Do you see a resurgence? Do you see in India, at least let's say a strong minority of people who are stepping out of the box, whether they are representing it as separate from conventional organized religion, or they're actually encompassing Hinduism or Islam or whatever within their beliefs, where they're saying, "Hey, the scriptures have great information, but there's more information out there. There's stuff that we need to talk about." I mean, India is what, over 1 billion people. I mean, it's a very intelligent country, or really a continent, and they're high tech. I mean, what's the atmosphere like? The conversation like out there on the streets and in the mainstream.
Well, basically, India is at the right in the transitioning phase between, and the transitioning phase, I'm talking about the transition itself, the process itself is anywhere between 10 to 15 years back behind the process from one to the other. So from the point where we were maybe about 20 years or 30 years ago, where we were still, stuck in a certain way of thinking, and the internet and all of these exposure to the Western world, the rest of the world, has definitely had a huge impact in a lot of ways on Indians. So we have come a long way, but the thinking, the thought process is still the same. A lot of people are still going through the same thought process they did maybe 2 or 3 generations ago. Some are trying to move forward, but then the thing is, it's very complicated because there are a lot of things that and it's not just spirituality. I believe there's a lot of things that suppress people from actually becoming more outspoken about their spiritual awakening and all of that. Now, for someone like me, I have been noticing the community grow over the years in India, but it's still very very scattered. It's like I don't
Yes.
where I am. I'm in Chennai right now. This is South India, and I have yet to meet someone who I can really have a deep conversation with. It's maybe I'm not as I'm not as outgoing because I'm very reclusive, but at the same time, I do a lot of work online, and most of my clients and my followers and everyone is from the rest of the world. So, but even then, recently, when I started meeting more people in India, I just felt like there's just a handful of people who are really focused on service, who are really focused on bringing about an awareness. Most people are just, still into that phase of, okay, I'm a tarot reader, or I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm trying to make a living out of this. It's that, you know what I mean? The real educating, the purpose is still, more commercialized than to bring about an awareness. Whereas for me, like I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I'm bringing a lot of things into it. I refuse to put myself into a box and say, okay, I'm a psychic or a medium. And that was like, I still do that once in a while, but I want to do a lot more. I want to reach out to the common man, and that's you have to empower everybody. You have to get out there and speak a language they understand for them to be able to come out,
Yeah. No, I can relate to how you feel. I mean, absolutely. Now, without knowing, knowing that you were born into the Brahmin caste, right, which is the spiritual, I guess, the spiritual practitioners or that type of thing, right?
Yes.
So I would imagine that you, based on what you said, that you had, first of all, support of your higher sensitivities, and I'm sure you had some exposure from that point of view. Now, having said that, have you, and you just mentioned for 20 years, what did you start doing 20 years ago? What type of offering do you have to the people you work with? And has it always been the same, or has it evolved? As you said earlier, you're not really pigeonholing yourself into any category. You're kind of multifaceted. So can you kind of give us a little idea of what you do and what you've done?
Well, when I started off, this was back in before even we had Yahoo groups, and then before that we had GeoCities. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we had GeoCities groups. Yeah, I started back then. Like what I used to do was they had these spiritual groups back then, and so there were people who were trying to do readings, learn how to do readings for people, and that's how I started up. And I wasn't thinking that it would become a business someday. I was under the impression that I just wanted to learn how to do this, tap into my own intuition, just like a lot of people do. And it grew, and I started realizing that, but back then I had a career and I had the family business, and I also had to, take care of a lot of other things. And this wasn't something that I thought would turn into something full time. But and then I realized that people started wanting my time, and that's how it started to grow. And I had to put in more and more time. And then I figured that there had to be some kind of balance for energy exchange for me. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to ask for energy exchange. And I never felt guilty at any point. And that's another thing that people struggle with, the need to ask for energy exchange. That's another thing that the spiritual community struggles with half the time.
No, I'm glad you touched on that, and you touched on something else I want to come back to. But in regard to in regard to that, in regard to the equal energy exchange, or however you want to explain that, because a lot of people are struggling with this, and you obviously have gone through it already. How did you rectify that? How did you go through that, come out of that, evolve out of that in a balanced state?
Well, I figured that, I still do a lot of service. I have my own Facebook group. I do a lot of work online, which is free, because I want to always give back to the community in a big way. And there have been people who followed me for decades, years. I feel that there are people who can't always, have their money in their hands. So it's fine for me to just go out there whenever I have the time. I would love to just do something and not expect anything. But just like everyone else, I figured I had bills to pay. I have children to raise, and and I figured that I had to, if I was going to spend time, and I work about 16 hours a day, Todd, and that obviously means that you need to put in a lot of effort and energy and time. So all of this, and I run about 5 to 6 websites, so everything requires maintenance, everything. So all of this information that I put out in the form of videos and articles and a whole lot of things, I have online stores, all of this requires effort and teamwork. And so if people want to access all of this, they obviously have to offer something in return, and that's only practical. So that is how I approached it. I said, initially, I had to sustain my business, even if it doesn't mean that I charge a lot of money. It has to be able to sustain everything that I have online. So that's how it started.
Absolutely.
And then after a point of time, I felt like my energy also mattered because I'm a part of this universe. And this is what I want to tell everybody who has an issue with this. Energy exchange is important because if you just keep giving and you don't receive, it becomes, after a point of time, some kind of karmic imbalance. So that karmic imbalance results in the person who's receiving it to not really be able to, the result won't be as effective after a point of time because there becomes an imbalance. So that's when you have to realize that because of the imbalance, you need to do something to even it out because you are a part of the universe too. It's like filling up a glass you have two glasses, have water, you have a glass full of water in each, and then you empty one out and you expect it to, still fill itself somehow. It's not going to rain on that glass. You have to, add more water. So there's a balance. So you see, all of us is treated the same way in this universe. If you take out too much of anything, it becomes karma if you don't replace it. So you have to respect yourself, or the universe respects you. It's as simple as that.
Well, absolutely. The universe is subjective. So it's going to give you exactly what, and I totally dig that. I think that there is new frequencies, elevating frequencies in regard to all the different aspects of our experience. So one of those being energy exchange, money, abundance, whatever you want to call it, commerce. And I do think in all these situations that new templates, new blueprints are being developed, but I agree with you. A lot of people have struggled with it. I've sat back, my partner and I have sat back for a long time, not knowing what to do, so not doing anything with it. And in the process, I've taken out almost $25,000 in loans in the last year and a half to sustain this. And I'm done with it. I'm done. At some point, very soon, there's going to have to be something's going to have to be put out there, and hopefully in the most aligned way to continue to offer and expand what we're doing, which is so much more than this show, and have faith that it's going to be reciprocated by like-minded souls. And I really believe that. It sounds like you have built, early, like you're like a trailblazer. And I know a lot of people that have built communities. Do you see any change? Do you see people being more accommodating, more open? Do you see any type of change because you see people complaining in the light worker communities like, oh, you're getting infinite intelligence, you're supposed to share that for free, or whatever the case is.
Right.
I mean, do you see it changing? What are you recognizing out there? What have you seen?
See, there are two different things that are happening here at this point. Now, the thing is, you see, they have to, it's not possible. You see, it's not our responsibility to always keep people happy. All right. The purpose here is to be the light, but for others to see or become the light as well. It's their responsibility. Every one of us has our own journey. So we only put out information because we want to help others. But at the same time, if that is taken for granted constantly, so you see, it's like they don't mind paying for everything. They go to the hospital when you're sick. They need, when they need legal services, they pay for it. They know that everything requires money. But when it comes to going to a psychic or a spiritual guide, they think that should be offered free because it comes from out there. But what they forget is that, if it wasn't for the instrument that we are, we're being paid to be the instruments. And we are still in the 3D, whether we like it or not. We need to survive. And the energy that without this instrument, that wisdom would not be able to transfer the information to the recipient.
Yeah.
And this instrument needs to be maintained, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend on. It comes on quite often, Franco Di Nicola, and he's been doing it for many years, like you. And the way he explained it was very similar to what you're saying. And he was saying, at a higher level, there is an energy exchange. It's that is somewhat we're conscious of it and somewhat we're not. But at another level, at the human level, just take the rest of it out. The human has certain things that it needs, food, clothing, shelter, and all that stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a really good subject, and I think it needs more, it needs more examples and maybe even more analysis. But I think
And all
it's
of this
like
actually
everything else.
comes in. All of this comes in towards the one word called awareness. Awareness
Yeah.
of spirituality itself needs to change big time. Right from the first time someone has a spiritual awakening, they start to come online. Now, when they look at the spiritual community, I mean, if you come into a spiritual community, there are all kinds of people, but a majority of them would be people who are trying to understand this. And then, of course, there are those who claim to be the elite spiritualists. Who, on one side, you see people who would be telling you things like, okay, you have to not want abundance. You would not want to have anything to do with materialism. You should want simplicity. You should be able to give more and more and not need to receive all kinds of things. And then on the other side, I mean, I'm being very observant here. I've watched this community grow over the years, and I have been also criticized by these people for well, some people have actually gone ahead and called me, as a glorified spiritual diva of sorts, like because of the way I like to dress myself. I like to, and I would say, you know what? I respect myself. I respect what I do. And this is how I love and respect myself.
I love it.
If you wish to love and respect yourself as a hippie, by all means, please do so. Or if you wish to love yourself as a yogi, by all means, please do so. This is how I do it. And if I don't feel the need to judge you, I don't think that anyone has the right to judge me. That is the very first thing people need to realize.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, look, this is really good. And I love the way these shows always fall in a certain sequence for me. So it's like one continuous multidimensional experience, right? Activating experience. So I wake up this morning and I'm like, you know what? I'm fed up with this. And well, I'm serious. And so, it's like, and just hear me out. I'm being a little extreme, but I wake up and I say, you know what? And go back to what you said earlier about balance. It doesn't matter to me if it's a karmic imbalance or this type of imbalance. That I feel the imbalance, and I'm saying to myself, I'm over giving, I'm over serving, and I'm getting the short end of the stick here. And I'm not a selfish person, and anyone that's been following Soulogy knows that. But I'm like, something's going to change. But it's not their fault. It's nobody's fault. But it's my responsibility to change this from here.
Yes.
I change
Perception.
from here. It's got nothing to do with these people out here. It's got to do with me. And if I want to do A, if I want to do B, if I want to do C, then, and these things are aligned in my heart, then by God, I'm going to do it. Now, thank you for letting me say that. I wanted to ask you, because I don't want to let you go, because this is very stimulating. I really have, I'm not big on organized religions. I'm really not. But I think Hinduism is very unique. It's also very old, and it's got a lot of really good stuff in there. And I like the fact that it's presented, I don't know, with more sense, with more soul sense than some of the other religions. I can't believe we even follow them, and I'm guilty of that. But my point is this: in terms of your individual relationship with source, with God, goddess, with the infinite intelligence, many people, when they have communion or they have connection, they see different faces of the universe: divine essences, angels, archangels, past souls, disincarnated, whatever. Do you have specific icons, deities, divine essences that you communicate with, that work with you, or maybe that did and you evolved out of it? How has that worked for you? Or do you basically communicate with one singular universal voice?
Well, as you said earlier, and I have said earlier, I grew up in a Hindu family, so you pretty much are exposed to all of these gods and goddesses. And but my experiences, to be honest, started even before I even figured out what religion was, or what the names of these gods were, because the very first experience that I had, supernatural experience that I had with one of these deities, was when I was very little. And this is something that is so vivid in my mind even today, but I can't explain it. But I can only say one thing. And there I was in my tricycle when I was around 3, and it was after sunset, so I was playing outside, and I remember for some reason I just looked up in the sky, and I actually saw the ascended master Krishna. It was like looking at a canvas. The sky just turned into a canvas. I did not know who he was. I really didn't. And then that canvas changed, and I saw the goddess Lakshmi, who's the goddess of wealth. And at that, when you're that young, you don't know these names, you don't know who they are, or you don't even know if these things happen to other people. You're just looking at something. So, but I remember those images even today, because they're deeply embedded in my mind and my heart. But that was my very first spiritual experience with a deity who at that point I didn't even understand. And it was only after I started growing older that I started seeing them in the form of statues and all of that. And I did tell my mom at some point that when I was really young, I saw this, and she was like, nah, it must be imagination, or maybe, oh, that's great, that's about it. So as time went by, there were a few experiences that I've had, especially with Krishna, where I have seen his manifestation. I've seen him appear, and
Yes.
and I've always felt like deeply connected to him. And as I grew older, I figured the connection was getting stronger, to a point where I was able to actually relate to him as someone I've spent a past life with. And so this is how my connection with him started to grow over and over again. And as I got into my spiritual journey, for the first 10 years, I didn't really experience much of a connection with any Indian deity, for that matter. I was still connected more to Christ. I was connected more to the Virgin Mary. I was connected more to the archangels. But as time went by, I felt that this whole thing with Krishna started all over again. And it became stronger over the last 10 years. And today I do a lot of channeling. I do see him almost every day. We work. I even did a ritual, a healing for a baby, just about a few hours ago, invoking him. And so I do a lot of work with him. And for me, it's like, I don't know if this is something that, a lot of people in India would be even comfortable to say, because I don't say it much, especially in India, because in India, he's still regarded as one of the biggest gods, and he's really popular even overseas. So to say something like, I don't look at him as a god, I look at him as close to my heart, someone who means a lot to me. And it's almost like, if you could call it a soulmate or a twin flame relationship, I would feel like I'm really connected to him. And that's where I want to end it, because if I was to say more, it automatically is misunderstood. So, I don't want to,
And
you know
these
what I mean.
things,
So,
I know exactly what you mean. I had the
right.
same type of relationship with, I would call it cosmic Jesus. I mean, I grew up like you did. Of course, I was in Catholicism and other forms of Christianity, Protestant forms of Christianity. So as a little kid, that's where my connection was. I was like you and that 3-year-old with Jesus.
Right.
But then as I went on, it went away. But I never, it kind of went away in terms of my practice, but it was always there. And then when I woke up, his face appeared in the trees and he started talking to me. So I can totally relate to that. I'm very fascinated. I love your explanation too about your relationship, because I do think we put too much on it. And the more we try to explain it, the more we confuse everybody, even in ourselves.
Right.
Because if you look at Krishna, you look at Jesus, you look at Magdalene, you look at Mother Mary, Archangel Michael. I mean, there's no doubt that these consciousnesses have some type of, pretty profound permeation throughout the earth. And so how does that work? I'm with you. I don't need to explain it. All I need to explain or understand is the connection with my own heart. Now, I wanted to
Right.
ask you, you said you were in southern India. Is that right?
Right.
Did you say Chennai? Is that where you're at?
Yes, Chennai, yes.
Yeah, because I have a friend, a very dear friend that lives in Palakkad,
That's in
Palakkad. You know
Kerala.
that?
Yeah, that's in Kerala.
Okay. Kerala. Yeah, in
Right.
Kerala.
That's
He
another
lives in
state. Yeah.
Kerala. He is an incredible poet. And a few years ago, he wrote what I thought was the greatest poem I've ever seen. And I did a little collaboration with him and added some stuff in and put it to music. But it's about Krishna, and I want to read it to you because I think you'll
Sure.
appreciate it. And maybe one day, if you get down there, you can meet him. But it goes like this. It's called The Smiling Messiah. And it says, when the
Hmm.
calamities disturb my being and brutalities pierce my core, when I feel like a helpless warrior, when I crumble down in the chaos, when my heart and thoughts dry up and grow like a desert, when the greed and blindness create hurdles unmeasured, when I contradict myself and become weak and tired, when I think how to cry and I fear how to smile, when I think to myself, why am I like this when my concern is not all mine, all about things beyond me and what's yet to come. And then I added some stuff in the middle, but I'm not going to read that. So I'm going to go back to the end of his poem. He says, all I see is the beautiful healing face of an intelligent warrior, a divine avatar, a friend or sage for life, a musician for all mundane and divine souls, a smiling flute player called the enchanting Krishna, a messiah with a sword called smile. Dearest beloved of the soul, I feel the place you reign. I wish I should inherit your never fading smile. That always touched me, and I thought you might appreciate it. Plus, you live close to him, at least by India standards,
Well, it's
which is probably.
absolutely beautiful if you could convey that message. It's absolutely beautiful and very true and absolutely true
Yeah,
because
yeah,
from having worked with him and being close with him for the last 10 years or so and my
yeah,
entire lifetime of experiences with him, one thing I know is that he definitely I mean, his smile is all you need to know that everything's going to be all
yeah,
right. You know, he doesn't have to say a word. He's a man of few words.
yeah.
Sometimes there have been times when I've thrown my frustrations at him, like, you know, I do this much or that much, and, you know, and he would just smile.
You have
He would
those.
just sit there.
You have those
Yeah,
come.
he would
Yeah.
sit there. Yes, I do, because I would, you know, I would be doing so many projects and so many things that we're
Mm-hmm.
putting out there, and there would be still, you know, certain setbacks, and he would just smile no matter what I say. And there were
Mm-hmm.
times when I would look and say, "Is that all you've got to do?" I mean,
Yeah.
for all the energy that I
They
put
just.
out, yeah.
Uh,
And he would still smile. He's got the most amazing smile, but you know, like he's what he's saying is true. You know, all you really need to know is that he's smiling, and you know that everything's
yeah.
gonna be. And
I've,
that's something that I've experienced with him like my whole lifetime. I mean, he just
well,
would
if you
smile.
look
He
at
would,
the, yeah,
yeah,
if you look at the a lot of experiences like that people have in regard to Krishna or Buddha or even Jesus, it's the same thing. You know, that's I'm not going to go into the whole story, but because I've said it before, but when I woke, uh, that's what happened to me, except for it was Jesus. And I look up in the
right.
trees and I see his face, very brilliant, lit up,
Right.
illuminated, and that was the big thing about it. It was just a big smile. And I'm like,
You know
what's so
what? I
funny?
wanted to just tell you this. You know,
Uh-huh.
this is the one thing that he actually taught me, and I tell you,
Mm-hmm.
it works wonders. It does wonders, and has done wonders in my life. Is that he actually told me one day when I told him, "How could you just explain so much with just a smile?" And he said, "Try it; it will work for you too." And that's something that has stuck to me for years. So even
You
in
know, that's
very
profound.
difficult situations, I have actually smiled. And people don't know how to deal with it once you smile instead of react, you know. So if somebody's really annoyed or screaming or yelling or whatever it is, if you just calm your mind down and you smile, and you know, automatically it changes the vibration of the situation.
Yeah,
And somehow or the other, people start to accept that this is who you are. You know, initially
yeah,
they would get offended that you're actually mocking them when you're smiling and so on and so forth. But when you sustain that energy, that vibration, that peace and calm inside of you, and you just smile and you know that this too shall pass, you keep telling yourself that. And these are beautiful
yeah,
things that I've learned from him. And he told me when I asked him that very simple question, how can you just answer everything with a smile? And he said, try it.
yeah.
And
I
I
agree.
did.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that to be very effective, except for one of my 6 kids used to do it. Used to really irritate me. But that's how the conversation that I had when I woke up, and I looked and I said, well, what's going on? And he said, well, what are you worried about? I've been watching over you and your family for whatever. And I was like, oh
Right.
wow. And then I looked back at him and he's laughing harder. But that also happened to me when I hit the streets. I went homeless by my own choice, and I would walk the streets and find places to sleep and all that, and went through a lot of shadow work, inner work, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And that essence or consciousness would come in, and it would always be with a giggle. It'd be like, hey, this isn't even real. It's like, hey, you know what? Act like the whole world knows everything you've ever done. Now you've got nothing to be embarrassed about. So go about your life. Or just these crazy, humorous pearls of wisdom, right? But I love the
Right.
way you
Right.
explain that. And also I really appreciate in people who have downloaded or have intense, or let's just say unique powerful experiences, lifelong, or even for a few years, with the infinite intelligence, with the goddess, the icons, the whole 9 yards, that can maintain their down to earthness, that can maintain their dignity, their uniqueness, and not get carried away. And nothing against the people that do or don't, but it's such a powerful thing to pull down channelings and transmissions and not be uh, off balance, for even for a considerable period of time, egoically. You know what I mean? Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm
Right.
so clever. I'm so smart. Wow, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And it's interesting to see the evolution and transition of what used to be, I want to say, like the wounded healer yogi guru kind of thing, moving into
Mm-hmm.
this, what I would say is like a 5D new earth healer, people that have this, hey, I'm human, but also
Right.
I can stand on my connection with the universe. So thank you for setting that example.
Well, it's always an honor, and I tell people two things. One thing is that, always be an observer as much as you are a role player in life, because the more you are an observer of you, that's when you actually grow, you evolve. Don't just exist, you got to live. And to live, you have to be an observer. You
Yeah.
have to observe yourself from a distance, no matter where you are, what you do. And that automatically puts you into perspective, a different perspective, because you see yourself as part of a one consciousness and not just as an individual. When you're a role player, you're only focused on you, which is the ego and everything else that comes with it. But when you're an observer, you look at yourself from a distance and you see everybody else in the picture, you know.
Yeah.
And the second thing I tell them is spirituality is very simple. It's not any kind of system. The best part about spirituality is that you don't ever have to do anything that you're not comfortable with.
Right.
There is
And you
no
have a
right or wrong
choice.
way. You have a choice. You have an absolute choice of where you want to take your spiritual path to. No one's going to tell you this is the right way. If anybody tells you that, then they are still stuck into that programming themselves.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's interesting, 1,500 shows now that we've done with this program. And it's interesting to see the way this is happening. And I still go back to what I've learned in these shows, and that is when you have a conversation, regardless of who the other person is, and it goes like this, and it's just very open, very raw, authentic, and no BS and no games and no, hey, I know things you don't know, or whatever. And it's and the human is allowed to be a part of it. It has, to me, the highest activations, transmissions, channelings, and downloads come from this. They come from the open heart, willing to share, which is the energy that you put out. So again, thank you. It's an enjoyable way to start the morning. It's an enjoyable way to start the morning, and I don't normally get up this early over here to do a show.
Well,
It's
I'm
not my
sorry
style.
about the different time zones, but I,
No, it's okay. It always happens. Anytime I come in with the wrong attitude, it ends up being a prolific experience. And anytime I come in with an expectation, it ends up being something that's not so great. But isn't that how it works, right? Isn't that how the
yes.
whole the whole navigation
that's
of
the
our
most
lives.
beautiful, that's the most beautiful part of life, where it's not predictable. And I don't
Yeah.
like to be predictable either. I think that, every moment unravels something amazing, and people should
Hmm.
just pay attention to the moment. And
Yeah.
it's not about, yes, you can find out about predictions. As someone who's reading into the future myself, everybody has these gifts. All of us are
Yeah.
evolving. All of us have these abilities, and I am trying my best to empower that knowledge into other people, not as a
Yeah.
teacher, not as a mentor, not as a guru, but as another person who happens to just know this, and I want to share it. So it
Right.
doesn't matter who you are, what your culture or background, or your career or lifestyle is. If you could just understand that this is in you as much as it is in me, then that's it. You're done. You know, you're
Yeah.
pretty much equipped with
Yeah.
everything. You just need the information.
That's a great way to put it. It really is. And I'd love to, we'd love to collaborate with you again and expand awareness of what you're doing and your energy. And maybe if you're agreeable to it,
It would
I'll,
definitely be an honor. I had a
yeah,
fantastic time talking to you, Todd.
yeah, you're fun, and you're real. And before we head out the door, I'm just going to give you, a moment here to say whatever you have to say. If you want to let people know where they can find you, any events you have coming up, or anything that you'd like to talk about, or even more commentary.
Well,
The floor
it's
is
like the
yours.
first thing we can do probably is, first of all, I would like to thank all of you who are listening or watching. Now that you can't see me, but you can listen to me. But thank you so much for being here. It's a real honor to be here, and I feel that any platform that serves people is a blessing. And so, Todd, you're a blessing. And whatever we go through every single day, we still keep offering, and we still move on. And we're warriors who, even when we're facing our own storms, we go out there and we help others with their own storms. So we keep going. And for those of you who are out there, as I've said before, spirituality is a way of life. It is life. It is everything about you, and you can take it wherever you want. Don't have to do anything at all that doesn't feel comfortable. This is one thing people keep asking me. Oh, Ayesha, I feel like doing Reiki, but I don't know if it's right for me. I feel uncomfortable. Well, don't do it if it's uncomfortable. It's as simple as that. Don't do anything that doesn't feel good deep inside. Period.
Right.
There are no
Right.
rules, there are no books to follow, there are no laws. It's just you. You do whatever feels right for you. Don't have to compare your spiritual journey with that of another person, because each
Yeah.
one of us is precious. Each one of us has a journey of our own. You are a fingerprint. Just stay that way,
Yeah.
and you will grow your own beautiful way. You will spread your wings as you are meant to, not as someone else is meant to. You're here
Yeah.
to make the best version of you. And every single incarnation that you've come back as, whether you believe in incarnations or not, you have always accumulated information. You have always taken back home information and come back for more. And we are all here, and we're all the same. The moment you feel connected to everything is when you realize that, you're not alone in this journey,
Yeah.
but each face that you see every day has a story behind them. So let's not judge others. Let's not worry about other people judging us, because they don't know your story and you don't know theirs. So we are all here to do our part. That's basically all that I wish to say. So if you're going to be interested, if you will be interested in any of my work, I have a YouTube channel. So just Google Ayesha Sheeba, and there's tons of stuff that's there, or on YouTube. I have done a TEDx speech recently in July, so it's up there too. So there's a lot of stuff.
Wow.
You can go to my website, www.revolutionoflight.com. Like I said, I have 4 or 5 websites, so you can even look me up on Facebook. All the links are out there.
Oh, wow. So you've been on TEDx. That's very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
that's recently, July. I was there. Yeah, it was
Wow,
quite
that's
an
awesome.
experience, though. And I have to say that TEDx is really another platform that's wonderful. It's definitely, putting you up on a platform where the world sees you. And and they are as a community too, starting to accept things like spirituality into it. They're getting more speakers who are into spirituality to convey messages. The very first
That's
thing when I was asked to speak, the very first thing was, they had certain words that you had to avoid using, like archangels. They gave us a list of things that you can't speak on stage when you're preparing a speech. So when I told them that I'm a spiritual visionary, they were like, we can't use the word spiritual. I said, why not? That's just me. If you want me to fit into your community, I'm sorry, I don't want to fit into your community. You're the one who invited me to speak. So it was like 2 days before the event that they said, no, go ahead. We're fine with the word spiritual and visionary. So that came up on my tag and everything. So it's how we make ourselves. If you love and respect yourself enough, any platform would be able to reflect on that. So don't ever be afraid of expressing yourself as who you are. You are who you are.
And
Those who are meant to find you will find you.
That's right. You can always say no.
Exactly.
Like you did.
I was willing to say no. Yeah, I was willing to say no. I was not going to change my my designation into something that would make them feel comfortable. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing yourself and your energy and your stories. And we'd love to collaborate with you again, and maybe even put some video and imagery, and then of course your live person in front of us as well. But this went very well. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, Todd. It's been an honor, and I'm really grateful to have been here and sharing all of this with you. Thank you.
All right. Peace out. Best to you and your family. All blessings.
Thank you. I love you. Bye-bye.
Love you too. Bye-bye.